What's working well for Democrats in that battle? And then I'll ask you what you think they need to do better on. But right now, what's working well for Democrats in that battle? Not the midterms, not 2028, but now.
I think right now, Mark, not much is working well. I think I don't know where we've successfully stopped Trump on any major initiative that he has tried, whether it's the small stuff, renaming something or taking over the Kennedy Center, or the big stuff, the big beautiful bill, his immigration crackdown, his push on DEI. Nowhere can I point to and say, aha, we got him, we stopped him, or frankly, we even materially slowed him down. Anywhere he stumbled, it's been his own fault. Like he got out a little bit over his skis. And I think he's a much smarter politician now than he was just because of experience. And he's got the advantage of having kind of been rested for 4 years and studying, as you've documented on here, what he did wrong and what if he could do this again, he would do better. So I think our party still focuses on the personal and focuses on the process, and does not focus often on what it is. And I think crime is just the perfect example of this. Most Democrats still don't want to talk about, okay, what is our solution to crime? Why did crime get so bad, let's say between 2015, kind of the mid 2010s, and now? A lot of these blue cities in the 90s and 2000s, Democrats moved back into. People love living in them. So I just think right now our party still struggles mightily to understand Trump. They don't ask the question why he's successful, and they don't understand that it's substance over style that often is the secret to his sauce.
You sort of answered the question of what you think folks need to do better, but is this different if you think about Barack Obama as president, or George Bush, or Joe Biden? Is the Democratic Party, as the opposition party, in the minority in both chambers of Congress? Are Democrats doing worse combating a second-term president than previously, or is this the way it usually is?
I think they're doing worse because Trump is a different animal. He's about maximum power, maximum leverage, push the envelope to try to achieve what it is he wants to achieve, whereas previous presidents felt more boundaries. They just felt there were certain things that they couldn't do. And when the walls went up of opposition in the U.S. Senate, in Congress, or if the media howled, they felt some sense of, okay, I can't go there. Whereas Trump has such a firm support of his base that he doesn't feel that, it's a 48-48 country, and he successfully kind of cleaved off that 3% to hover around 50% in elections, that I think no one, even a Democrat, has never been able to experience such rock solid support. I don't know of another president that 10 years into his movement is stronger today than when he started. Obama started losing oxygen within a year.
Leave Gavin Newsom out, because we've talked about that so much here and on two-way. What other Democrats, and maybe you wouldn't include Newsom, but leave him out anyway, what other Democrats would you look to and say they at least sort of get it? They seem to understand Trump. They seem to understand the kind of either symmetrical or asymmetrical efforts required to try to slow him down. Is there anybody you put on that list?
I don't know. Certainly not in Congress. I think Bernie Sanders and AOC are unafraid to challenge him. And so they're having some success within the party of rallying it and getting attention, raising money, getting volunteers to support their causes. But I don't see them understanding Donald Trump and having a plan to strategically take him on. Yeah, I think people like Josh Shapiro and others are laying in the weeds. They're basically heads down. Let me be governor. Let me govern my state where I think I can try to speak up. Like Shapiro on Israel, calling out what Netanyahu did was a little bit of a bold move for him. But otherwise, their heads are down. Nobody, to me, Rahm Emanuel may be the one who I think understands it, who's road testing some ideas, who's going around the country. But Rahm, by his own self-deprecation, jokes about worrying about the base, knows there's certain things he can do, and he obviously has no power, and parts of the base doesn't want to listen to him. So is Rahm building a movement to successfully take him on? I don't see signs of it yet. I think he's on to something, but I don't see any people lining up behind him to say, here's our leader.
Yeah, and Rahm is not running a war room or involved in the day-to-day, right? He's just trying to position to maybe run for president, which we'll get to in a second. Let's talk about the midterms. conventional politics in the olden days, at this point in the cycle, a little over a year away, we'd be looking at candidate recruitment, fundraising, the generic ballot question on polls. Who would you vote for in the next congressional election? Are those the right standards to use to judge whether Democrats are being well positioned for the midterms, or are we in a different era now and it's more about social media or something else?
No, I think that stuff still matters at this point in the game. I think this is where there is some good news. And Democrats may be successful in the midterms, not because of anything we did, but just because I think the idea of a check on Trump, but my understanding in both parties, that polls pretty well. They may lose everything. But look, candidate recruitment has been pretty good. In the U.S. Senate, I was surprised they got Roy Cooper to jump in. It's good they got Sherrod Brown to jump in. We'll see about Maine. I think in the House, the fact that Jerry Nadler now is stepping down after Jan Schakowsky stepped down, there is movement afoot that these older members need to go. Younger members have more energy. We'll see whether or not this is going to translate in swing districts. Can we get good candidates? But there does seem to be momentum on recruitment. Where I think the party has a problem is while on the hard dollars, meaning the money that they can spend directly on these races, kind of say vote for, vote against, we're holding our own. On the outside stuff, we're getting crushed. And the DNC with the RNC is getting crushed, literally 7-1. So money is a concern. You can only get outspent so much. There is clearly energy in our base. So I don't think we're going to lack for volunteers, coming up. There's a question of whether the Republicans will be, equally energized. So I think the mechanics aren't bad, but there are warning signs because Trump and Vance are a machine. And the alignment between the outside groups, the Charlie Kirks, some of the other organizing groups, is rock solid. There's been no break. They continue afoot and they're raising all this money. Trump's going to have, I think, over $1 billion kind of at his disposal, let alone the candidates. That's real.
Yeah. Just double back on one point, and then I want to talk more about money. You mentioned, Nadler, Jerry Nadler, my congressman, your former congressman in New York, retiring, giving way almost certainly to a younger candidate. And yet the two big recruits on the Senate side you mentioned, Sherrod Brown and Roy Cooper, they're older. They're not new blood. So is that an issue for Democrats, or is it all case by case, just whoever the strongest candidate is available for a particular seat?
I think it's case by case. Look, our party has less of a history of younger candidates in the Senate. I mean, I think Ruben Gallego would be your only one that you've really seen recently where a truly young person kind of stepped forward and got a seat. So, we'll see. They are older. They've got histories of running statewide. They've got, histories of success. Our benches in North Carolina and Ohio are fairly thin, although my colleague Nina Turner would disagree about Ohio. So, I mean, I think they're good recruits. But you're right. In terms of the Senate and governor's races, we still tend to go to the old safe shoe.
Yeah. All right. One more on the midterms, and we'll talk about the presidential. After the 24 election, obviously a lot of disappointment in the party over losing the White House. I think still silver lining, multiple silver linings. Your party won almost every contested battleground Senate race, even though you don't have the majority in the Senate. You won a lot of races. It could have been much worse for the party. And now you hear that the fat cat donors, the big bundlers, the big check writers are discouraged despite winning all those Senate races. Is your sense that the big money, the people who fund super PACs, the people who fund these shadowy outside groups on both sides, that Democrats are engaged over the midterms, or are they still sitting on their wallets?
You know what? Both. They're engaged in trying to figure out what the party needs to do, like what went wrong and what are a set of solutions to solve these long-term systemic problems. But they don't see it, so they're sitting on their wallets right now. Some of it is some people are afraid, right? If I write a big check and it's in Politico, or I'm putting myself, my business, my family on the radar. This is a White House that pays attention to that stuff and has been known to potentially make life a little bit uncomfortable for people. So some of it is nervousness, but people don't see what the long-term plan is. And look, a lot of them are not dumb. They don't want to flush their money down the toilet. They want to know that the voter registration plan is going to actually work, that the get out the vote plan, that the media plan, where are you spending your money? What are you saying? Like, they're asking the right questions. Their advisors are saying to them, I don't quite see the plan yet. And it speaks to the lack of confidence in Chuck Schumer, which is shocking because donors for years kind of in Chuck we trust. And with Hakeem Jeffries, right? They trusted Nancy Pelosi. They don't quite trust that Hakeem knows what he's doing to get them to victory. And until they see that, they're sitting on the sidelines right now.
Yeah. And of course, not the only reason, but part of the reason you choose New Yorkers to be your leaders is because presumably they can raise a lot of money. And as you said, they're both struggling. The other thing is technology. I don't think either of us knows enough about this or as much about this as we'd like. I used to have great fingertip feel for which party had technological supremacy. And in the age of not just social media, but AI and voter registration, voter turnout aided more than ever by technology, it's a huge question. What sense do you have of where your party stands on the technological fight with Republicans to win elections?
Mark, it's a great question because if you talk to the Biden and then Harris people, they thought they had a good analytics department. They thought they had a pretty good pulse on what was happening. It is amazing how social media now is used to kind of try to even to some level has replaced polling in certain instances of trying to kind of day to day, hour to hour, district by district, understand kind of what's trending, emotionally how engaged people are. Like all of this is now tracked by presidential campaigns, like big sophisticated campaigns. They thought they had a very good operation, and to some extent, what they saw leading up to the election played out. Where Republicans seem to have the advantage is they are finding and registering new voters. And whether we're suffering because people don't want to be a Democrat, we're just not finding these needles in the haystack out in these states. It makes me nervous that Republicans continue, even after November, to methodically plow ahead and register new voters. And we're struggling on that. And I find it hard to believe it's simply because our brand is so bad.
Yeah. Lastly, just a couple minutes to go. I want to talk about 2028. You and I agree that Gavin Newsom, and some of the public polling reflects this, has been aggressive to a positive end. That he's more front of mind now as a 2028 candidate than anyone else. Who else would you say, 1, 2, or 3 names, whichever you want? Who else is who had a good summer, who positioned themselves well?
I would say Wes Moore up until kind of this past weekend a little bit, in that behind the scenes, Wes Moore is a name that you hear people talk about. He's fresh, he's new, he's young. He's had some good kind of below the radar travel around states. He struggled in his gubernatorial race to answer the question about, claiming to have received a Bronze Star. Yeah. He struggled in a CBS interview about it. That, to me, the fact that you're still struggling on a public stage.
We showed that earlier in the show, and I think that's cautionary, not just for Wes Moore, but for all these other candidates who, as you and I have discussed before, they think, I've been elected governor, I've been elected Senate, I've been on the national stage. The level of scrutiny is so much higher, and the inability to get away with dodging questions is higher too.
And I think the other candidate I was saying, and you and I have talked about this, we may have a little disagreement. AOC and Bernie Sanders continue to draw massive crowds. And while I think that Gavin Newsom strategically, tactically, and stylistically has had a great summer, I still think right now, if she announced, I'm running for president in 2028, she would have one of the best fundraising lists, one of the best volunteer lists. And she is where substantively, it's not my politics per se, the party is. Now, I think, as you say, once the bright lights of a national media get on her, it's not just the New York Post, she's going to face a lot of questions. She has struggled at times when it's been put to her face in interviews. She's hammed a few times. But she has had a good start to the year, if you want to just think about the politics of winning a primary so far.
Back in 2020, people on the American left pushed very hard to get children's books into schools, getting all sorts of titles onto the bookshelves. Things like Activist Baby, Woke Baby, Anti-Racist Baby, and Non-Binary Baby. Well, our new sponsor thought if we're doing the whole political kids books thing, we shouldn't leave out a book called Capitalist Baby. So here you go. Capitalist Baby, a fun illustrated A to Z kids book, is now on sale at Amazon.com. Capitalist Baby is a beautifully illustrated, it's a little tongue-in-cheek, and a clever A to Z book for kids and parents who love business and capitalism. Best part is this: Capitalist Baby is optimistic. It celebrates the ideas of an American entrepreneurship and business. It is instructive without any preaching. Real business concepts are woven into the charming text and into the illustrations. Capitalist Baby is your alternative to the leftist kids book so popular after 2020. Buy Capitalist Baby now for yourself, your kids, and as a gift. It's a delightful read that deserves a spot on your bookshelf. For the first time in human history, there's an A to Z alphabet book for people who believe in free enterprise, entrepreneurship, and commerce. So right now, go buy a copy or buy 3. Search Capitalist Baby on Amazon.com today.